Hello and welcome to your go-to Detroit Pistons podcast, The Pistons Pulse, co-hosted by me, Bryce Simon of Motor City Hoops, a former D1 hooper and current teacher, husband, and father of 3 amazing kids.
And I'm Omari, co-host of the second Pistons beat writer for the Detroit Free Press.
And of course, we're blessed to always be joined by our producer, Wes Davenport. And real quick, a special shout out to all of the mothers out there on this fine Mother's Day. Wes, all the mothers in your life. Omari, all the mothers in your life. All the mothers in my life. And I want to say this as well, guys. It's not just like I use that term mother in very loose, like whoever was that in your life, because that's not always genetics based or, whatever. Like all sorts of females in our lives have helped grow us and shape us and help us become who we are. And so I just want to shout out all of those across our listeners, our families, all of that. So real quick before we got a lot to talk about, Omari, the fan bases, I'm sure they're ready for it, but I wanted to get that in here first.
No doubt. Happy Mother's Day. Happy birthday to my mom. I'm sure you're watching right now that all the moms listen to the Pistons post. So there's a few of you out there. Then it's kind of weird that the lottery is on Mother's Day. And I'm having to do some stuff with like my mom yesterday because I flew out to Chicago today. Then on top of that, the Pistons gave everybody in Detroit bad news on Mother's Day. So that's pretty unfortunate. But beyond that, I hope it was a good day for everybody.
I'm going to shout out one of my students here. He's been telling me he was going to find the live stream, and he finally found it today. So shout out, Brian. I appreciate you, my guy. Go do some homework. I'll see you at school tomorrow. So Omari, NBA draft lottery. So I was recording with Sam. I hadn't been able to talk to my wife about it. She slept during the lottery, so she didn't even know. I walked out of that just to say hello real quick, give her a kiss, come in, record this. And she goes, did the Pistons get the number 1 pick? I said, no, they got number 5. She goes, how does that keep happening to them? Why does that keep happening? Omari,
it's a curse.
Why does this keep happening to them back-to-back years? And then, I don't know, do you remember, what were the odds the Ivy year whenever they fell to 5? Because they weren't the worst team. What were they that year?
I think they were the second worst team. So it was like bottom to it was like second worst.
They could have dropped to 6 and they only dropped to 5. Okay.
Yeah, so it wasn't the worst outcome. It was the second worst outcome.
Yeah, and then worst outcomes the last 2 years. Here's one thing I want to get out of the way. I learned this actually with James Edwards. You're not a fan. You have no emotions about this. So I understand that. What are your thoughts, though, just whenever you see the Pistons fall to 5 as somebody that covers the team, talks about the team, and is trying to build this thing out?
Yeah, I feel like the media guys become like a lightning rod when it happens because like somebody was like, well, what about the fans who are like suffering? And I was like, I mean, suffering is a choice. And apparently that was a really disrespectful thing to say. So I'm sorry. Didn't mean it that way. But suffering is a choice, right? You know, the lottery system is intended, especially now, to just not blanketly reward every single team that's extremely bad. And nobody has any control over it. And my general life philosophy is that if I have no control over it, I'm not going to let it affect me more than it needs to. So that's just some Omari philosophy today. But it's just bad luck, man. Like, it just sucks. Like, it's really the Lions' fault because ever since they beat Aaron Rodgers, they've been on the up and up. And the Pistons in that span have fallen down to the 5th pick twice. So I think that Lions went over Aaron Rodgers at the end of 22. That set the stage for this past round. Really cursed the Pistons. The Lions lost the same night the Pistons won, I think, their 3rd game of the season. Like, there's been all sorts of coincidences. Lions had a great draft, Pistons fall to 5. Like, I think it's just this seesaw thing going on right now. And no, it's like, it just sucks, right? Like, I don't even know what to add at this point. It's just, you got to make the best of the pick. And now $60 million in cap space, and you just got to do it the hard way.
So if everybody knows, Omari's in Chicago, so he's out there for the lottery. So if you guys see the background, that's kind of a nice background there. You must be at a nice hotel. So,
it's a Spring Hill Suites, which is, like, it's not like a Marriott Marquis or anything, but they do have a good selection in art, which is always nice.
I like it. Will J says it's Mother's Day, but I have to be on here. We appreciate it, Will J. Always a real one, always tuning in with us. And again, some Mother's Day. I want to talk about some stuff, just the draft lottery in general first, Omari, because we'll talk about Pistons and picks and all of that. Wes brings up a good point. He goes, the stats really quickly, the last 2 years do not matter. It was a whole new roll of dice. So this year was 40% for them picking 5. Bad luck for sure, but that's the coin flip. And so what I equate that to is, like, I teach my students genetics, right? In terms of having a boy or girl. And it's the same idea. Just because you have a girl with your first child doesn't change the percentages of the second one. It's still a 50-50 chance. My wife comes from a family of 5 girls. So like over time, yes, it should balance out. But the fact that in back-to-back years that the coin flip landed on heads isn't that crazy. Go flip a quarter right now. And if you just do it twice, there's a chance that if all of us did it, multiple of us are going to get heads. It's over 100 flips, 1,000 flips, all of that where those things change a little bit. So anyway, that's one thing.
People are saying that the lottery is rigged, by the way, because they would never, ever rig it in favor of the Atlanta Hawks. Just stop right now. They would not rig it in favor of the Atlanta Hawks. So that just completely invalidates the rigged argument to me.
Okay, so here's what I want to talk about 2 other things then. So Derek Dawson brings up our team wasn't even tank. He says isn't. I'm going to change it to wasn't even tanking. They were just bad and had horrible lottery luck outside of Cade. I agree with this take, Omari. I don't think the Pistons went into this year saying we want to win 40 games and have the worst record in the NBA. They just did a really, really, really bad job last offseason of putting a good team together, coaching, whoever you want to place the blame on. I don't think they wanted to be bad. Do you agree or disagree with that?
No, they didn't want to be they expected to take a step forward. So I don't know if that would have been to compete for a play-in or what, but they certainly expected to improve on 17 wins. And no, they did not anticipate 28 straight losses at all.
Yeah, so that's what I agree with that part. And yeah, it's just horrible lottery luck. Yeah. Doug McMiniman says, this is something I saw in the chat before we started recording. What are your thoughts on like the Pistons, the worst record only being able to fall to 5? So what a lot of people are saying now is, okay, we understand the lottery odds, all of that stuff, but is it really fair for that team to go all the way to 5? So where are your thoughts just in general on this lottery? Like I've seen the lottery is outdated, not necessarily rigged, a bunch of different stuff like that. I don't tend to care a whole lot. Do you have any feelings about it just as a NBA fan?
I really don't have any issues with it at all. Like what the NBA is trying to do essentially is just strengthen the middle class, where a team like in Atlanta can make a genuine attempt to compete, which they did. When they got DeJounte Murray, and they've actually been trying to win basketball games. So obviously they were injured last year. Trey DeJounte Murray is not the best backcourt combination. But even with that, you still had an outside shot of getting into the top 4 in the league. Once teams like that to be able to have their cake and eat it too, where you can say, hey, we're going to, like Houston, for example, like they won with the Brooklyn Nets pick, but that's another thing too. People are like, just tank all the way and trade Mikal Bridges, and they kept them, and they had a 20% chance of moving into the top 4, and it was actually bad for them because that pick went to Houston, but that's what the NBA wants. Like they don't want teams that are, I guess, in the quote unquote middle to feel as helpless because they actually tried to compete and just didn't do it as well as another team, right? Like they don't want them to feel as though they have to take a step back in order to move forward. So it sucks for a team like the Pistons, but I tweeted it earlier, they were conservative last offseason. They didn't, go as hard as a team like Houston that very clearly wanted to turn the page and invest in a different level of success. And that's where you end up. The 5th pick is still a perfectly fine pick in most drafts. You can still get a really good player. I don't necessarily see it as like something that ruins a rebuild. Like I think 3 straight top 5 picks. Yeah, they've had number 5 3 years in a row. So yeah, 3 straight in the number 1 pick. I still think in the grand scheme that should be enough to get a rebuild going.
Yeah, I mean, here's my thing with it, Omari. I don't have a better answer. So I'm not going to sit here and say, hey, this is stupid, this sucks, this isn't fair, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. If I can't give a better option, I don't know what the answer is. I don't want teams to do this. I don't want teams to tank. I really dislike what the Cleveland Cavaliers did the last game of the season to jockey their position for the playoffs. So I can't be frustrated about that and then encourage teams that tank. It's a different scenario, but for the same kind of idea. So I want teams to go out and try to win as many games as they can every year. I think players do that anyway. Like sometimes I think we put this on the players. Listen, I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong here. I can't imagine a player that's got to the level of the NBA not going out there and trying to win every single night. Like it's an organizational decision. But
yeah, no, absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Just got to consider most NBA players are fighting to stay in the NBA every single year.
True.
Like you look up every single year and there's 10 guys that's like, oh wow, they're not doing a team right now. Like I just checked the other day, where's Montrezl Harrell at? Like he had a torn ACL or something the other year and he's rehabbing trying to get back in the league. Like none of these guys are thinking, I'm going to take today off because if you're not a superstar, all that stuff can really come back to bite you down the road. So no, NBA players are not throwing games on purpose.
Yeah, not all of them anyway.
Well, most of them are not. Yeah. Most of them, 99%.
There's a scenario out there that we will not talk about because we don't have to, because that's not a part of the team that we cover. So, all right. I just wanted to, I didn't anticipate that being part of the conversation here, and it was. And so I wanted to address it because at the end of the day, you guys are our listeners, you're our viewers. We want to talk about what you guys want to talk about. And that was in the chat a whole bunch. Speaking of, if you're watching live, hit the like, hit the subscribe, leave a rating, leave a review, help us continue to grow, and come back and listen, because it's going to be a lot of NBA draft, a lot of offseason talk coming up. We'll be bringing on guests, hoping to get some of the no ceilings guys to come on. Last year, Omari and I did a mock draft, just like as we went around. I'm sure Keith Smith will be back soon as well. All right, let's talk about the lottery now. So Hawks go up to 1, Wizards are at 2. We have the Rockets at 3, the Spurs at 4, the Spurs sitting at 4 and 8, looking real pretty there. I will also say, like, the Blazers are another team that fell in this. Pistons at 5. What are your thoughts just with the players that could be there? Let's hash out some of that stuff, Omari, in terms of what we think is going to be available, and could this still end up being an okay thing for Detroit? Okay is the wrong word. Could they still end up with a player that the fan base can get excited about?
They can. I think the thing about the quote unquote bad draft is that it usually reflects the top more so than like the rest of the crowd. And I like any other draft, you look at this, 15, 20 players deep, and it's like, yes, a lot of guys that I think could be difference makers for a team to varying levels. And there are guys on number 5 this year that I still think could be really good and end up being one of the best players in the draft. I'm a big fan of Sheppard. I like Dalton Knecht. I like Donovan Clingan, and I know the Pistons have a big, but I just look at him and I'm like, he's a day one starting center, right? Like instant rim protector. Like he's a guy that you can really build around. So there's still a lot of talented players in that range. The reality is that even at number 1, you're not going to get like a splashy pick, right? And I think Alex Sarr is the best prospect. Like I think he's absolutely somebody who can be a franchise type guy, but I don't think the gap between 1 and 5 or 2 and 5 could be as big as it is in certain drafts. Like, where you have like a clear top 3 or 4, right? Like this isn't that type of draft, so you can still get your ideal type of player that low.
Yeah, I mean, that's my thing is we can't on one side say this draft has no star power, and then listen, I understand fans' frustration dropping from 1 to 5 again. I get it. I absolutely do. But we can't go into the draft saying there's no star power and then think it's the end of the world because they went from 1 to 5 in a draft that doesn't have like a true number 1 pick. I just recorded with Sam. He has no tier 1 or tier 2 player. Like he keeps his tiers across the board from one draft to the next. So yes, I'm with you. I think Alex Sarr is the best player. I guarantee if they got the number 1 pick, there would be people right now saying, what, Omari? Don't draft Alex Sarr. He doesn't make sense on this team. We have Jalen Duren. And there, you know who we'd be talking about? Zacharie Risacher, Matas Buzelis, Reed Sheppard, all of these guys. And you know what? There's a high likelihood that one of those guys is going to be there at 5. Now, the downside of that, Omari, is you don't get to choose which one of those guys is there. You may just be left with the one that's left over. But I don't think we can say both sides of that. I've always said I like this draft in terms of some of the depth. It just doesn't have the guys at the very top, like the number 1, 2, 3 pick that just makes you crazy excited. I'll get us into it with this. I think at number 1, there's a chance they would have drafted Buzelis. I would have taken Sarr, but I think Buzelis would have been in the conversation. We just did a mock. Buzelis fell and they took him at 5. I think they can still get a quality player, and that's probably about all you were going to get at 1 anyway, is a quality player with upside.
Right. And there's going to be this debate throughout the rest of the summer, probably until the draft. Should they keep it? Should they trade it? This and that. And like, I'm going to ask people at the combine this week, just sort of get a sense of like where that pick is at. Like, I know depending on who you ask, the opinions are all over the board on this draft. I mean, there are people who see Reed Sheppard as top 5. There are people who see him as 10 to 14. Like, it's the eye of the beholder this year. So this could still end up being a valuable pick. I just think it's a scenario where as we get closer to the draft, teams begin to make firmer decisions on their directions. You'll probably figure out the value of it a little bit closer to that. But with that, you also have guys going through workouts, and you can see a guy like a Ron Holland pop just because he's crushing his workouts. So still a lot to come. But in any draft, you can look at the 5th pick and generally get a pretty good player there.
Will Cole brings up but I think this speaks right to what we're talking about. So it says Pistons need impact guys, though. What's another role player on a roster filled with them? I think the point is you were getting a role player even if you drafted number 1. I think that's kind of my point here. Or if you draft Sarr, what does that mean? Like, I think Sarr is going to be really good defensively. I think some of these other guys, like Reed's going to be really good offensively. Dalton Knecht's going to be really good offensively. So I just think I understand the frustration, Omari. I get why fans are upset that they went from 2 to 5 3 years ago or 2 years ago, 1 to 5 last year, 1 to 5 again this year. I get it. We've had to watch a lot of losing basketball. I understand all of that. I just don't think that this is, last year was worse. Like, if you want to be upset about falling from number 1, last year's the year to be mad because you weren't able to draft Victor Wembanyama, or to fall out of the top 3 because you weren't able to draft Brandon Miller. That's the year to be really upset about. Now, if you don't trust the organization to make the right selection at 5, I get it, but then you probably weren't going to trust them to make the right selection at number 1 either. So that leads me into this one. Melvin Burns asked, Omari, any intel on who is making the pick for the organization? So I know you get tired of this question. I am obligated, though, Omari, to ask you where we're at with this.
No hire's been made, so I wish I had more to tell you. They're still in the process. I actually read a few weeks ago that the search firm they're using, Turnkey, typically has like a 6-week turnaround. So again, I think within a week, like, we'll certainly start to see a lot more names, but no until at this point.
And the one thing I will say is, as it gets further along, it makes me a little bit nervous, because if there are some trade up or trade back or whatever scenarios you'd like for some of those conversations to be had, I'm not worried that we don't have a decision maker by the time the combine is here, right? Like hopefully the scouting department is doing what they would do otherwise. Like, they will be able, whoever gets hired, they'll be able to sit down and say, hey, this is what we think. And hopefully the decision maker is in tune with all of this enough. It's not like they're going to need to get caught up on who the best players in the draft are. So I'm not worried about that as much as, if I'm Detroit, who I'd be on the phone with right now if I did want to consider moving back is the Memphis Grizzlies. I would call the Grizzlies and say, hey, you want to guarantee that you can get Donovan Clingan, because that's one of my favorite matches in the lottery is Clingan to the Grizzlies. I would call them and say, like, what would you give us to move back to 9? Which one of your young wings would you send to us? Then I would trade back to 9, Omari, and then I would draft Dalton Knecht at 9, and I would bring in 2 wings, right? Like, I'm playing out a very hypothetical scenario, but those are the conversations that maybe they're missing out on right now. But in terms of actually scouting these players, I'm not concerned about that part of it.
No, not at all. And this is certainly a draft where you probably do look at those straight down opportunities. Like you said, like a Clingan. He's a guy that some teams are going to be absolutely in love with because they have a major need at center. And again, like, he doesn't space the floor, but he pretty much gives you everything else you would want for like a drop type center. And he has some shooting touch too. So as a prospect, he's the type of player that a team realistically could trade up for, especially a team like Memphis that has assets that they could sacrifice. So I would watch teams like that. Yeah, overall, I'm very curious to see how this process plays out. I'm curious to see if this is a pick even worth trading. I'm curious to see, which players continue to emerge throughout this process. Like, we've talked about some of the high floor guys, but if there's any silver lining, it's that there are some really good high floor guys in that range where you know exactly what you're getting and you don't have to really project as much as far as what you're getting. Like, Risacher could be there, but you have to kind of project down the road what he could be. Like Reed, Sheppard, Buzelis, Clingan, you pretty much know what those guys are, and they all bring skills that the Pistons need, like, right now.
Okay, let's talk about these guys. So we're going to go to break. When we come back, we'll just go through them. We'll start with Sarr. We'll take him off the board, and then we'll move from there. The likelihood this guy's there at 5, so we can talk about some of these other teams in the top 4. Do we think that they would take him? Those type of things. And we'll just, next segment, we'll just talk about those guys, and then we'll figure out from there. So we'll do that after this short break.
All right, we are back with segment 2, and we're going to get deeper into the draft discussion because, again, once you get past Sarr, like, would it be fair to say that pretty much any other player is in play at this point at 5?
Okay, so I will give my board. I have 9 guys in my first tier, and I don't have this is just this tier of players. I don't carry over from one year to the next. I'm not saying like they're this tier of player in terms of all-star or something like that. It's just this year, this is how I'd have them ranked. I have Sarr and Topic actually in like a half tier above 7 other guys. And so it's not even that much. So I would say Sarr is the number one player on my board. Let's start with this. Is there a world where he falls? I say no. Even if Atlanta doesn't take him, then I think the Wizards scoop him up. Like they sprint to the podium to draft Alex Sarr. Would you agree?
I would be shocked if he got fast too. I mean, again, if you look at all the prospects, he's just the one that has the perfect intersection of skill right now and long-term upside. So he's not getting past two, and I don't think he gets past one, but definitely not two.
Yeah. So can we set on this? Do you think the Hawks end up taking him? Is that where like you're at right now? If you were Atlanta, you trade Capella and draft Sarr?
That's where I'm at now. Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. I'm in the same place. I think that that's what they should do. That makes the most sense to me. Okay, so we're going to take Sarr off the board. I don't think he's a guy that we should spend a lot of time talking about moving forward unless like the Pistons make a crazy move up. If you're moving up to draft Sarr, then that definitely means that they're probably moving on from Jalen Duren. So, and I don't think that that's where the organization is at. So I'm just going to go with my board. Nikola Topic. I think there's a chance Topic could be there at 5. I don't think Atlanta makes sense. Washington does. Maybe not. Washington, Houston, San Antonio could all make sense for a primary initiator like Topic. But let's talk about him anyway. Any thoughts on Nikola Topic? Primary initiator, 6'6", 6'7", young kid. He's back playing overseas after a knee injury, I believe. Some overlap with Cade, but thoughts on Nikola Topic?
The only reason he's not in a discussion for number one really is because he shot like 30 or 31% from three. And okay, like that's a big reason to not go number one. But I say that to say that the rest of his game is to be so advanced that he is pretty close to a sure thing as far as just knowing that you're going to get a point guard who can really run your offense for the next 10 years. He's been compared to Goran Dragic. Like, I think that's a pretty good comparison. He's just got great touch around the rim. Shot 50% overall, despite shooting 30% from three, which just tells you how efficient he was inside the arc. I also shot like 87% at the line. So touch-wise, like there are not many issues with him. It's just he's not shooting the three very well. But if you think he can figure that out, then he's probably the first point guard off the board in this draft. Yeah, you look at a team like Washington or the Spurs, and I think both of those teams probably have a huge need for a guy like that.
Yeah, I agree. I think even Houston, I don't think that one makes as much sense. But if he's there and you want a Fred VanVleet replacement eventually, that's a guy that could go there. And like now that lineup is really super set. So would you agree that Topic is probably off the board for the Pistons at 5 as well? Like, I don't know that he's a guy that makes a ton of sense. How much would you consider Topic if he is there at 5? So let's say this draft goes something crazy. Sarr, Risacher, Buzelis, Hall, whatever. The top 4 guys are off the board. It's like, hey, this is our best player available. Like, is this, I mean, I know you're a little more best player available than me, not a ton, but a little bit. How much would Topic overlap with Cade kind of give you a little bit of pause?
Yeah, it gives me a lot. It's just, I just don't see Topic as an off-ball guy at all. I think you want the ball in his hands, and to maximize his skill set, you put the ball in his hands. And Cade's obviously the same way. So I just don't see those guys really meshing, especially since Topic like really is not a shooter at this point. And even though I do think he'll be able to shoot the ball, I don't think you draft him with that expectation, because again, it's just certain things that are tough to project at the next level. And it wasn't a high volume shooter either, like we even play in that way. I just don't see him fitting next to Cade. Like if they had just Ivy and Sasser, I would be like way more for it. But just with the existence of Cade, I don't know if you could double dip on 2 primary ball handlers or so many other needs on the roster.
So what I would say is, as Pistons fans, you should hope for Topic to go number 2 or number 4, whatever. Like you want Topic to go ahead of the Pistons pick and continue to push some of these other guys down the board, because these are the guys I think are truly in play now. I think Sarr's gone. Topic is probably gone and doesn't necessarily make a lot of sense. So let's talk about the guys who could potentially be there. Let's talk about Zacharie Risacher, young 3-and-D wing, still almost shooting 40% from 3, even as he struggled the last month. I think this is a guy that could be there. So you look at this. Could Atlanta take him? Sure, but they have some wings. Washington has a ton of wings. I think Washington either goes point guard or big man. The Rockets, a ton of wings. Now, I think the team that he doesn't get by is the Spurs. But, I mean, that's just one team we're talking about that take something different. Like maybe they love Rob Dillingham and don't think he's going to be there at 8. I think there's a world where Risacher still falls to number 5. I've seen Risacher, Omari, on people's big boards 7, 8, 9, 10 even because of his last month. I think this would be a huge win for Detroit if he falls to 5 and they can select him there.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, he's somebody that people would have mocked to the Pistons at 2 or 3. So to get him at 5, I think would be a huge win. Just a guy who's 6'9", 6'10", long wingspan, 38% from 3 on pretty good volume. He's young. I believe he's still 18 or just recently turned 19. I forget, but he's young. He's like college freshman age. And he just being a big wing, he really fits that hold the Pistons up how bad at the 4, where you just have a pure floor spacing 4 who can play next to K, play next to Durant, all those guys. So I think fit-wise, I think long-term upside-wise, he probably checks the most boxes for Detroit. The risk is that maybe you just end up with a guy who's like a Cam Johnson, but even getting Cam Johnson at 5 is still good, right? Like, I think that's probably a pretty realistic outcome for him, but that's still a pretty good outcome. So I mean, like Risacher a lot. Yeah.
A month ago when he was shooting 45% from 3, I took him number 1 in a month. Like the Pistons got the number 1 pick and I took him over Sarr because at that time it's like, this dude is a 3-and-D wing who's shooting crazy from 3. It makes sense. Now, maybe the shooting wasn't as true as that, but I think the form actually looks really good. I had a scout tell me he is the French version of Trey Murphy III. And I'm like, I'm in. I like that. Give me that guy. He was actually saying it a little bit negatively in the terms of, do you want to draft that guy number 1? But at number 5, that is a slam dunk selection. And I'm just saying, based off kind of what you see, the momentum with him, I don't think it's crazy that he could end up at number 5. I don't think it's likely, but I don't think it's crazy. So I think Risacher is still in play for them. Okay. The next guy on my personal board would be Matas Buzelis. And I think this is a guy we probably need to spend quite a bit of time on talking about, discussing. I think Wes has a really interesting idea about Buzelis that I want to bring up to you that makes a lot of sense. And let's talk about him, because I think this is the most likely player to be there at number 5 for the Pistons. So what are your just tertiary foundational thoughts on Matas Buzelis?
I can put him in that helpless chair a little bit, where it's just the sense that they do so much stuff you want at that position, really like in a prototypical sense, but it's just the shooting that makes you wonder. But sure. Buzelis, I mean, his rim protection instincts, I think, are great. I think he's a really solid ball handler. He sees the floor well for his size. And he's a solid athlete. He can finish at the rim. I think the shooting is probably what really makes his draft stock all over the place, because he didn't shoot well. And I think the G League Ignite in general are a tough evaluation just because of just how much of a wreck this past season was. Like, it literally killed the G League Ignite. Like, this season cannot go away. It literally killed the league.
I mean, Omar, in past years, I think we've said this, and it's like, they literally, as you said, got rid of the league because it was so bad. And they were, I think the final thing was one of their academy players ended up, I think it was Malawak, went to Duke. And it's like, whenever one of these guys we've brought up through our system, that may not be the right player, but everybody's like, this is really bad for the Ignite that they couldn't even keep their own player. And it's like, they had no point guard at all, with a bunch of wings that aren't primary initiators. It was so bad.
And that's why it's tough to judge the shooting aspect, because he did shoot the 3 pretty well at lower levels. And people probably forget this now, but this time last year, he was the sort of default number 1 pick, just because of the hype that Ignite had and just his overall profile as a player. Really, the past 2 years, he was probably the fill-in number 1 pick up until they actually started playing basketball. But I just don't know how many good threes were generated for the Ignite last season, which is probably a little bit higher on Ron Holland and other people as well. But yeah, Buzelis, he has so much to his game that I love. And it's just, you look at the 25.5% outside shooting. But not only that, he was a tick under 70% at the line too. And he also didn't get to the line the whole. I know that those numbers are a little bit skewed because of the G League. But he doesn't get to the line a lot.
That's an important point to make. I'm glad you said it. Yeah.
Yeah, and he doesn't shoot the ball particularly well. Didn't take a lot of threes either. So that's what makes me nervous about him. But beyond that, I think defensively and playmaking wise, there probably are some similarities to a guy like Denny Avdia. And that's a player that would fit the Pistons obviously very, very well.
So Wes just got so excited. I wasn't watching, but I can't imagine he didn't light up with that comment. So Buzelis, so a couple caveats whenever we're looking at the Ignite players, because we're talking about Ron Holland as well. if you go to Real GM to look at these Ignite stats, make sure, guys, you scroll down to G League full season stats per game. Because if not, like, they split their season up into two, like showcase and regular season, and for whatever reason.
It's awful.
So
yeah.
it makes no sense. I guess we don't have to worry about it anymore. So whatever. Well, if you want to look up G League stats, I guess it does for just guys that are in the league. 46% from the field, 26% from three, 70% from the free throw line. And again, I'm glad you pointed out, Omari, 2 free throw attempts per game, but in the G League, they just shoot 1, and then it's worth 2 points to speed up the game. Over 6.5 rebounds, almost 2 assists. I think what's really intriguing, almost a steal a game and almost 2 blocks per game, Omari, in the G League at his age. I'm with you on the shooting. If this guy would have shot 33% from 3 even, or if the free throw percentage was better, this would be a done deal, and he probably would be, talked about as the number 1 pick. The thing is, the high school shooting was good. He shot it really well at Sunrise, like 40% from 3. Not Grady Dick good, but really, really good. He came in with a rep as a floor spacer. So here's my thing. I used to evaluate him as a wing, and I didn't like that I'm not sure he does this stuff well enough as a wing. Then I started looking at him as a forward, like a 4-man. And then Wes even threw out the idea of him as a small ball 5. Now, I don't love it as a true 5, but as a changeup, I'm like, okay, now this intersection of skill of him passing, him putting it on the deck, even only being, let's say he only improves to a 35% 3-point shooter. This stuff makes a lot more sense if he's like a 4-5 man as opposed to a 3-man or a 3-4. What are your thoughts on him kind of playing in that role? Like he's not the same player as Jeremy Grant, but kind of the role that Jeremy Grant had when he was in Detroit. Like, I think he will easily be the best low man rim protector, weak side rim protector this team has had since Jeremy Grant.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. And I think that's a lot of the appeal is that in a lot of ways, he is a prototypical 4. And the only thing really preventing him from, I think, being the no-brainer pick at 5 is just the lack of shooting this past season. But you mentioned the defensive stats. Like, I think his defensive instincts are really, really strong. I don't know if he's the most mobile for it. Like, I don't know if he's going to be a guy that can defend off for it. And that's why he may be a little bit of a 4 or 5 tweener and probably not a 3 at all. Like, maybe there's like a Robert Covington comparison in there somewhere. On-ball defense, I think it's a question mark. But as far as just like the off-ball, roaming, like that type of role, I think he can be really, really good at it. And again, he does move the ball. He can handle it a little bit. Solid athlete. He checks a lot of boxes at the 4. It's just the lack of shooting that's the difference between him being a long-term starter and like a bench piece to me. And the Pistons are already a team that lacks shooting. Like, that could really backfire for you down the road if you can't find somebody in that front court who can shoot, right? But I also think his potential as a shooter is what makes him such an enticing pick, just because how many players out there in the league that can truly protect the rim and shoot. And it's like 6, 7 guys, those guys never switch teams. So if you have a chance to get one, then it's probably worthwhile.
So Wes asked me about kind of his overall shooting metrics. So I got on Synergy and looked here. 27% from 3 on all jump shots. Catch and shoot, he was 30%. Here's a very interesting number. He was 35% on guarded catch and shoot 3s, which you're like, that's not bad, right? You can live with that. Guess what he was on unguarded catch and shoot 3s? Unguarded. So the ones that were supposed to be easier.
Yeah, I'm guessing it was like 22% or something drastically like low.
Did you look this up, Omari? You cheater.
I did not look it up. No, I had no clue to ask you that.
22% on unguarded catch and shoot.
Okay.
Yeah. And then here's another number that brings it down, which is something I don't care about this number because I don't think it's something he'll be asked to do. He was 1 of 15 on dribble 3-point jumpers. So roughly 7%. Now, here's the thing. I don't know what to take away from that. Like, I don't know what to take away from a guy who shot that well, I would say, on guarded catch and shoot 3s and that poor on unguarded catch and shoot 3s. I have no idea what that means. I haven't been able to reconcile it. But
I'm just saying he can't shoot. like I would just say he probably can't shoot. And it's only because he shot one a year before that I can't say that really.
I was gonna say, but then why did he shoot decently on the guarded ones? And then what Wes asked me about was, so 2% jump shots, he was 43% overall, and he was almost 50% on 2-point dribble jumpers. So just some numbers there for people who may not have access to all of that stuff on Matas Buzelis. And I know we're spending a lot more time on Buzelis than maybe other guys. I think this is a guy that really I think he's a guy that's probably going to be available there. And I do think he fits. Like the idea of him, like you said, if he shoots, I think it makes a ton of sense that he can shoot that he fits on this roster and would be the selection there. So any other thoughts on Buzelis before we move to somebody else?
No thoughts on Buzelis. I didn't want to talk about Reed Sheppard because I don't think he's going to be mocked to the Pistons a lot. But if you are drawing up the perfect guard to put next to Cade Cunningham, how many of those boxes does Reed Sheppard check for you?
All but one. I am worried about Reed Sheppard's on-ball defense. Yeah, okay. I think every other aspect of what Reed Sheppard does makes a ton of sense. I think for Reed Sheppard, playing next to a primary initiator with Cade's size is what's best for him. He spaces the floor. He can probably be like he's a secondary creator and probably can be your primary creator in second units. I'm a little nervous about Reed Sheppard's defense. I'm just a little nervous with that, Omari.
He's one of those guys where the numbers are so overwhelmingly good that
it's crazy.
I try not to overthink it. And it's like, yeah, he was maybe a touch under 6'3". I hear the on-ball defense, and I think that's going to stick out more in the NBA just because he lacks overall size. I think he's probably a little bit more solidly built than a guy like Sasser, but I wonder if you have some of those same issues. But again, above 53% overall, like 53% from three on high volume. We took 144 threes last season. His range is deep. His release is quick. He can shoot on ball, off ball. His touch inside is great. He can knock down pull-up jumpers from mid range, and his floater is pretty good. Like, he just does everything else. And I do think he cares about defense enough that his nose for the ball and just the way he's able to really disrupt passing lanes. Like, he had 2.5 steals and like almost a full block. Like, that's going to pop in some way in the NBA. And I don't know how that's going to manifest defensively, but I feel like despite his on ball like lack of size and maybe intensity, he can still figure some things out and be a net positive on that end.
Like Wes says, forget 50, 40, 90. Reed is 50, 50, 90.
He's like 50, 50, 90. Yeah.
Every time I try to drop Reed Sheppard because I'm like, dang, he's like, here's what's a little concerning. Him and Rob Dillingham were at the lottery today, standing right next to each other doing an interview, and it looked like they were the same height. And I was like, man, that's a little concerning. You're right. Reed's playmaking is awesome. He has incredible hands, like super active, super accurate, all of that. I just worry a little bit about how big he is in terms of like not his height even, Omari, like just his strength. Like how can he fill out? Someone like Cason Wallace gets away with it because he's so dang strong, especially in his upper body. That's my biggest concern. With that said, I think he wants to be good defensively. Like you said, he blocked a ton of jump shots, actually. Like that's where a lot of his block, came from, the active hands. He's probably going to be, I think he probably ends up a little more neutral defensively than a positive. Yeah. Maybe his shooting. You can live
with that, maybe though, right? If he's shooting really well and playmaking, like let's say he's Tyler Hero with like more steals, like that's a realistic outcome for Reed Sheppard, right? Yeah,
like I think as a player, yes. If I'm talking Pistons specific, I'm a little like less sure because I want some. And now I'm just getting nitpicky. So again, like at 5, like why am I being this nitpicky with it with some of these other players? Okay, so Arthur says Reed defensively is Ivy. Like I actually disagree with that. Like I think his instincts are a little bit better. The difference there is Jaden has way better physical tools than Reed has. And also Edwin and some other guys. I know you've dropped some other names in the chat. We'll try to get to those guys before the end of the show as well, whether they end up being Pistons guys or not. So yeah, you sold me a little bit. Like maybe it doesn't matter. I think what you then have to do is you have to really build out the defense around him and Cade, right? Because you have to Asar, right? Asar can make more sense because you have real floor spacing with Reed. Fontecchio is probably good enough defensively. Like I hate to get back to this, but then you need a 5-man that can really, really defend behind those guys. So
you do. Especially if you pass on a guy like Klingon, and I still think if Klingon's there over Reed, you probably just go Klingon just because that's probably the tougher need to fill if you're just looking at the rest of the draft.
Okay, I want to talk about these guys. So let's keep it rolling. We'll go to break, Omari, and then when we come back, we have, I think the Ron Holland, Steph Castle conversation can be had essentially at the same time. We need to talk Donovan Klingon. and then probably Dalton Knecht, maybe a little Cody Williams. We can start with whoever you want after this short break.
All right, we are back with segment 3, and we got about 20 minutes, so we'll try to speed through some of these. I mentioned Ron Holland earlier. You kind of grouped Zacharie Risacher in there, which I think makes sense just because they're kind of similar archetypes, but just given that neither of them shoot, but they give you a lot of other stuff you want on the wing. I guess the question is, can the Pistons justify taking another guy that can't shoot if everything else pops enough? Because you essentially did that with Zacharie last year. And I love Zacharie as a player, as a prospect, but I don't think you can have two of him on a roster. Like at some point, you just got to have guys that can shoot.
Yeah. Pound the Pavement says thumbs up, y'all. Yes. Thank you. And give us some of those over on YouTube. And we have a shout out from Brazil. So he says, yes, I'm sad over here too. Sorry.
I'm just staying up till like 4 a.m. to watch that. I don't know what the time is in Brazil right now, but I'll be able to get some sleep. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Okay. So Ron Holland and Steph Castle, I think they're both questionable floor spacers and shooters. I think they're both upside defensively in different ways. Ron's more of like a disruptive guy with his athleticism and explosiveness and all of that. Steph is more just like solid. I think there's a chance Steph Castle is the best perimeter defender in the lottery anyway. And I think offensively, Ron's a little bit more of a bucket getter, still off the ball, but bucket getter where
he's going to draw so many fouls in the NBA.
Yeah. I think he's the best athlete in the class, especially at the top. And where Castle is more of like a connector, great off-ball cutter, offensive rebounder, can probably play with the ball in his hands a little bit more. Like some projected this guy as a point guard when he was coming into the season. I don't think that's what he is now. So they are different players, but I think for Detroit specifically, Omari, you would have to reconcile the potential real lack of floor spacing. You talked about Holland the other day. I like Holland. I have Holland and Castle both. Like I have them 5'6" on my board. I love these guys. I just don't know if they can. I don't know if they can reconcile guys that can't space the floor. It's back with the Buzelis conversation as well. So that's why I'm a little lower on those two guys specifically to Detroit.
Yeah, I kind of agree. It's like you do need to think about fit to some extent. And to me, if you're thinking of a guy like a Holland or Castle, to me, that says you're completely out on Ivy or you're out on the SAR or you're going to make some sort of trade to even this roster up because I just don't think you can play those guys together. Like you got to play Ivy like somebody who can shoot the ball and you can't play Ivy with Holland or Castle, and roster-wise, you probably have to pair them together. Wait, Omari, what do you think Brazil is? I have no clue. I don't know. I know it's like the next country over, but like in my mind, I'm like Brazil is all the way on the. Like,
it must just be almost
far
straight.
East that you can go. You know,
no, it's just straight south. Oh, I see what you. But I think it's essentially just. I think it's just. I mean, it must just be straight south if he's only 2 hours ahead. So
probably so.
Listen, I'm not going to clown you for saying it because I would think the same thing. Anytime somebody says something from another country, but my first thought was like, man, I feel like Brazil's kind of straight south. I bet it's not that bad. So that's unfair.
It was
guys.
just like hey, I could take like it was the more so like how far east it is. So I was like, it's like it could be like 6 hours. Like I don't know. And I'm in Chicago, so my time is off anyway.
Listen, guys, Omari doesn't know what day it is right now, so you guys can't hold him accountable for that comment. He does not know what day it is. And why should he? The dude travels all the time. It's not fair to him. That's unfair criticism. Listen, Nick says, love you, Omari. No, we know, Nick. We appreciate you. You guys can critique Omari about a lot of things. The day and time is not fair. That is off limits. So I think that's the Castle and Holland conversation for now. Donovan Clingan, let's have that conversation. You guys want a big man that can I'm not saying you or what, like in general, Pistons fans want a big man that can defend. This could be your guy.
Yeah, I like Clingan. Like I feel like I said this maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago, but to me, Reed and Clingan are like the two guys I feel are most likely to just be like day one starters in the league just because they bring day one utility. Like Clingan's wingspan is what, like 7'7"? Like it's just insane. But look at a guy that could be like essentially a Walker Kessler, but I think he moves a little bit well, like passes the ball out better.
He does pass.
Just overall, like I just think his feel for the game is just a lot higher. Like he really is a guy that Like, I don't want to compare him to Bam just because Bam's a little bit of a smaller center. But if you just look at guys that can like really not only defend, but like really pass to him, be like a hub, they do have some similarities there.
Cashflow says, can he really defend on the perimeter? No, like that's not what he's going to do. He's a drop coverage big. Like this is a drop coverage guy, but as Wes points out, he's a couple inches taller than Walker Kessler and heavier. Like this is a guy that is going to be a rim protector, drop coverage, but I think he can recover and move better. Like I think a lot of people go like, what's the difference between Clingan and Zach Edey? Clingan's younger, and I think Clingan definitely moves better than Zach Edey. I'm glad you bring up the passing, Omari, because I think that's absolutely something that he does really well. Definitely not a floor spacer either. So like he's not stretching the floor out or anything like that. Mr. Jones says potential, maybe potential. I'm not willing to go there. I think it's hard to project that, but maybe that's something he develop. He is young enough. I'd have to look up his free throw percentage to know how confident I felt about that. But this is a guy that can really defend and he can really finish. Wes says 57% from the free throw line, he believes. So like that's not something that's super, super encouraging. Cashflow says, what about Clingan versus Filipowski? Filipowski would be real interesting.
I like Filipowski.
Clingan's just way higher on my board. Like if I'm going to take a big at 5, I'm taking Clingan. If I want Filipowski, all right, let me trade with the Grizzlies. They can take Clingan at 5 and I'll take Filipowski at 9 and take one of their young wings.
Yeah, I don't think Clingan should get out the top 4. And I've seen Filipowski as well as like a 10 through 14 range. But I do like Filipowski though, because he can really shoot the ball. Like he can pass it. I think he's solid defensively. Like he's like a jack of all trades, master of none type guy. But just like any big that can hold their own in the paint and shoot is going to have utility in today's league. And he would essentially give the Pistons a lot of what they got from Gallinari and such last year, because their plus minuses were still like off the charts good. Like I think Filipowski could be sort of like a Mike Muscala type guy for this thing.
Yeah, no, Filipowski is very, very interesting. I don't know that's if he's a guy you take at 5. Maybe you do. Like I don't like breaking my tiers, and he's in a tier lower. That seems pretty rich for Filipowski. I also want to piggyback on something you said with Reed, and when we were picking for the Rockets, we felt like those were the two guys that were probably the most ready, like NBA as well, to come in and contribute with those guys. So let's talk, before we get to some of the questions, some other things. Dalton Knecht. I think this is a guy that now that the Pistons did fall to 5, Pistons fans are really going to talk about. Yeah, so our friend from Brazil and Dalton Knecht, he's very good and polished. At 1, I don't think this was a conversation. At 2 and 3, I don't think this was a conversation. At 5, I think this was a real conversation. I've seen people go like, how is a 19-year-old going to come in and contribute to the Pistons? This team needs to get better, those type of things. Knecht is 23 years old. He looks like he has a lot of fans. Cashflow, Knecht is my guy. Relaxing Sounds, Dalton is my guy.
There's a Knecht hive. Okay. I wasn't sure if it was a Knecht hive. There it is.
I'm a little surprised by it, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
He can really shoot it. He can really score it. He's way more athletic than I think what people probably realize. And as a 23-year-old, because of the path he has taken to this point, I think there is still some potential for growth, Omari, because late bloomer in high school, went JUCO, was a smaller D1 program for a couple years, and has only spent 1 year at Tennessee. And I want to give one caveat that what I really like about Knecht. He transferred from Northern Colorado to Tennessee specifically for one reason, and that's because Tennessee is known for their defense, and he wanted to go get better. Now, did he get improve as much as what people wanted? No, but I like the mentality.
Yeah, I kind of seen Knecht that's taking a guy like Buddy Hield, who was an older rookie coming out. I think he might have been 23 too, but that they're a flamethrower shooter that can just come in and give you that immediately. Then at 5, I think there's a lot of value there. Like the reason why I value Reed, I think a little bit higher is just because of the playmaking and some of the defense you get as well. But Knecht arguably is a better fit in some ways, just because he really is more of a 2-3 hybrid, right? You can plug him in next to any of the guards and probably be okay. On the defense, I don't think he's going to be that great of a defender, but just as a I really do like his game. And he can be like a Kelly Oubre for this team. Like these are all guys that the Pistons really could have used this past season.
So Melvin Burns says, can Dalton defend? And YouTube user says, bad defender at 23-year-olds is a problem. I agree. I'm giving him a little more leeway again, because this was a kid who only was asked to play zone in high school, went to JUCO, which with all due respect to JUCOs, and I'm a JUCO product, I don't think that like defense is the number one priority, went to Northern Colorado. And here's the other thing. I'm giving him, hoping, like at Tennessee, if you watch some of those games tomorrow, they just gave him the ball and said, go get buckets. When you scale back his offensive usage, there should be more energy for the defensive end. Now, listen, I realize that's a lot of ifs and caveats, and I understand people are like, I don't want to hear all of that stuff. I get it. But if he is even a neutral defender, I think with what he brings offensively, he at least should definitely be in the conversation. Team Savant says can connect guard threes because he seems too slow for twos. I would agree with that. I think defensively, he's probably a wing, having to guard guys that are a little bigger, a little less quick, not as twitchy and those type of things. And then in this scenario, Omari, like you would definitely need to add a perimeter defender to help out Ausar. So.
No doubt. All right, we have about 8 minutes left. We can start digging into some of these questions here.
Yeah.
I'm going to start off with Doug. Do you think this affects the offseason plan significantly? I'm going to say no, not significantly, just because this is not, for one, you can't really plan around the lottery. And I think teams in general sort of approach the lottery in the sense that it's a complete crapshoot, right? So you can't really base the rest of your offseason off of that result. I think with that, the fifth pick probably is not going to have the trade value that the first overall pick has. So the next evaluator will have to figure out, is it worth moving off of this pick? There may be a case where a deal doesn't materialize until the actual night of the draft. If there's somebody there on every team wants, like let's say Klingon drops down to 5 for whatever reason. But with all that said, I don't think so. Like if you win the Wemby draft, that probably changes your offseason plan. Like falling to 5th, then this type of draft is probably not too different from if they had gotten 2 or 3. Honestly, I think the only real difference is if you get 1, then there's a team that just has to have star.
That's what I was going to say. If they would have landed number 1, then now you're having to reconcile, do you draft Sar? What do you do with Sar? How does that play out with Duren and all of that? Or if you have number 1 and it has real value, or even in number 2 somehow has real value, whatever, and you're going to package that to go get another player. So, I mean, I think it obviously that's a big difference, but with where they're at now, I don't think that being at 5 changes a whole lot. Omari, do you believe the Pistons have the trade capital to acquire Brandon Ingram or a similar player with the pick falling to 5? So this kind of plays into it a little bit as well.
I think they do. I'm curious to see how hot the market for a guy like Ingram will be, because the thing with the Pistons is just there are teams that really do have draft capital that Detroit does not have. So if Detroit's making a deal for that type of player, you're probably going to have to part ways with 1 or 2 of the young guys, whether it's Ivy or Duren or somebody, right? Like I'll say the only guy that's probably truly untouchable on this roster, to the extent that a player can be, unless you're getting Giannis or something, is Cade. So I'd be curious to see. I think if you look at New Orleans, they clearly need to do something. And, the Pistons could possibly just give them the financial relief that they need just because they have cap space, right? So I think they do. It just really comes down to how much, to what extent are you willing to part ways with the young guys? Because I don't think you're going to get them for just the 5th overall pick. I think it's going to take a little bit more of that.
All right, Pound the Pavement says, what can you get for a 5th pick? What kind of trade? Some say it's pretty worthless. I don't think you're just moving number 5 on its own. I think the trade scenarios here, Omari, are you trade back. Like I threw out the Grizzlies scenario a little bit earlier. Maybe somebody drops, right? Maybe somebody falls in love with Rob Dillingham. Something like that where you can trade back and acquire a future first or something like that. I think the other thing is, at the end of the day, if you want to really take a swing, you're going to have to package multiple young players anyway. So I still think the addition of Matas Buzelis or Donovan Klingon or whoever packaged with Jaden Ivey or whoever it is, I think you still are going to have a player that has value if you put them in a trade with other young assets, if that's the path the Pistons front office would decide to go.
Yeah, and them owing that pick to the Knicks just continues to haunt them. Well, I guess you just feast. When are they going to get off this obligation?
Yeah, no, it continues to convolute things every single time we talk about this stuff. 2 more, one specifically here to the Hawks. Any chance the Pistons could take on Capella? 1 year left, and the Hawks give us an add-on to a 2nd round pick. So Hawks are going to draft Sar. Let's in this scenario, Capella makes sense coming to Detroit. Playing as, I guess, you would still prioritize Duren, but as a backup rim protector and lob threat.
I would look at that for sure. Capella's the exact type of big you need for the reasons you just named. If I'm absorbing that salary, I probably want a little bit more than a second round pick. Although realistically, I don't know like what else you would get. But if they're zeroed in on Sarr, then that probably makes it less likely that they move off of a guy like a DeAndre Hunter and more likely to move off of a guy like a Clay Capella. Wes posed this question earlier, which I'm also curious what the answer would be, is how much Onyeka Okongwu factored into that discussion, because he could be a starting caliber center. Obviously, like, he passes it pretty well, but he's not a guy that's going to like shoot the ball particularly well. So does he just stay at the backup big? He's probably not a guy where you pass on drafting a big because you have him, right? Like, you could have both those guys in their rotation. Like, I would take a swing on Capella for sure. I would probably just want a little bit more than a second round pick if I'm absorbing that salary.
Again, we've talked about this. This is the type of Singh contract I think makes more sense for the Pistons this summer. Like, a player that can actually play and contribute. And I think Capella still has a little bit of juice left. And so those are the type of ones, not the Joe Harris ones. But like, I don't know if you're going to be able to use $60 million on just like actual quality signings and stuff like that. So if you take this as part of it after making other moves, I could see that. So last one here. And this is from Edwin. Edwin, I told you we would get to it. So we're going to Omari. I don't know how familiar you are with all of these guys, if you want to just talk about one, but he says some other late round prospects. He said he's really high on guys like Bobby Klintman, Tyler Smith, Keyshawn George, all slated to be late out. Like, I would say all of the Tyler Smith is a guy that draft media. You'll find some guys that have him in the lottery. I don't think Klintman or Keyshawn George are lottery picks right now. None of these guys are lottery picks for me. All of these guys would be in my late first, early second round tier.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest. I really more so just looked at the top 10 and like the bottom 10, because after 53rd pick, that whole middle range, I was you guys, I know just from watching, but I'm going to, Bryce is the draft expert on this one. My draft bag only pertains to the Pistons for the most part. Although I have seen Bobby Clinton's name a lot as a player that people are intrigued by. So I still have a little bit of digging to do on that.
Yeah, so Klintman is a guy, I've obviously got him at 53 for the Pistons in my last two community mocks with Richard Stayman. I don't think he falls to 53. I think that would be like a steal for the Pistons. He played in the NBL over in the same league as Sarr. Great off-ball cutter, long, like forward, can shoot it, I think, but the numbers don't entirely back that up. I think as like a second-round guy, that'd be a great addition. Tyler Smith is a little bit more of a stretch big. So obviously that would be very enticing to Pistons fans. The defense is a big question with Tyler Smith. Keyshawn George is the kid at Miami, a little bit older for a freshman, crazy skill. Like, he can really shoot it, great length, great size. Like, I really like what Keyshawn George does. I really wish, and again, this goes back to the Fontecchio trade. I wish the Pistons had a pick at the top of the second. They just don't. And so Team Savant brings up Deron Holmes. I think Deron Holmes is also going to go in the first round. I think he's a very skilled big. You won't find a bigger fan of Deron Holmes than me. I just don't think he's going to be in a range for the Pistons to select him at all. So I don't think he's as realistic. Let me look at my board real quick. Some wing forwards that I have in the second round: Keyshawn Johnson, Nikola Jurisic, Harrison Ingram, Jalen Bridges. If you guys want to look up some names, I think Cam Christie. I know that's a guy that, you know, will be familiar for some people.
Yeah, I know that name. I like him.
Yeah. Sam has him way higher. I have him in the 50s. And then some stretch. PJ Hall is a big out of Clemson, and Quentin Post is a big out of Boston College. Like, if you're really looking for stretch bigs, those are a couple names for you guys that I think would be there late in the second round with that pick. So I think we'll get into that stuff a little bit more as we get into it. So I don't know, Omari. I feel like we touched on this about as much as we could. Again, guys, I think we will try to have a couple of the No Ceilings guys on soon. Probably have Keith Smith on soon. Omari will have some insight. You're going to do interviews, right, at the Combine?
Yeah, I'll be talking to guys. I think a lot of the interviews are taking place Tuesday and Wednesday, and I'll be there Monday too, just because that's the first day, real day of the Combine. So yeah, pay attention to my Twitter throughout the week. We have a lot to update this time next week. And it's like 5 weeks until the draft. So yeah, I feel like this is your bread and butter. It's Bryce season. It's Bryce season.
No, that's what John. Yeah, if Keisha, the Pistons, I don't know how the Pistons get back into the first or the top of the second to get some of these wings that are pretty exciting. Like, I'll throw out another name. Peyton Sanford is my guy. Like, if you guys follow me on Twitter, you see me tweeting about him all the time. Like, I just don't. He's going before 53 in my opinion. And so I don't know how the Pistons are going to get there. One last thing, KDA 1024 says, guys, hit the like button. 150 people in here, only 35 likes. We would really appreciate it, guys. Hit the like button. Help us spread the word. Follow, subscribe, whatever you do on podcasts, subscribe to the channel, all of that. We'll have a ton of this. Moving forward. Draft content, off-season content. I think we'll cut it off there for tonight, Omari. Thank you to everybody who joined in, asked questions. Guys, we're really sorry if we don't get to everything. We try to follow the chat and get to all of this stuff. It's tough at times. But we appreciate all of you. Thank you so much for the support. Again, shout out to all of the mothers out there, all the females in your life. Hug them, give them a kiss on the cheek, tell them you love them, send them a text, whatever. Make sure they know that you appreciate them. And we'll be back next week with some more draft stuff. Omari, take it away, my guy.
Yeah, stay with us. We're going to have a lot of draft analysis coming up. So stick with us. This is the day the offseason starts. This is the official offseason kickoff day. Shout out to Mother's Day as well. And I'm going to close this out. Big thanks to our audio producer, Robin Chen, our editor-in-chief, Nicole Avery Nichols, and our sports editor, Kirkland Crawford. And big shout out to Wes Davenport as always. And we'll talk to you all next week.